So now we'll move on to Laura.
Ella es bióloga de la Universidad de Antioquia, Colombia, donde estudia las interacciones ecológicas entre insectos y sus plantas hospederas. Además de liderar proyectos de divulgación científica, hoy Laura nos hablará sobre los indicios de una relación evolutiva en mariposas herbívoras de samias. Los invito a todos y a todas a que si tienen consultas, por favor las dejen en el box de Q&A, por favor. Muchas gracias, Laura. ¿Estás todo bien?
Sí, gracias. Gracias, Angie.
Perfecto.
Okay, perfect. I can hear you. Please go ahead, Laura. Well, thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to be here today and do this last chat. I'm Sierra-Botero, and I work with the conservation group of the Universidad de Antioquia in Medellin, Colombia. I'm very interested, as Laura said, the interaction between plants and insects and evolution ecology. And today I will talk about the Samia herbivorous butterflies and what I have discovered in terms of the relationship. The first thing, when we talk about evolution, sorry, we can't see your presentation. Oh, now we can see that there was a screen on top of it. Thank you. Can you see it now?
Laura, es el slideshow que tiene que prender.
Laura, you should use the slideshow, please.
Delante de tu presentación. Ahora bien, ahora bien.
Está bien. Bueno, entonces ahí sí estamos viendo.
Okay, so, oh, perfect, we can see it now. So the first thing when we talk about studies of evolution is that many of these studies are very old, and in fact, Herlich and Raven proposed the arms race between the evolution of toxic secondary compounds in host plants and the adaptation of mechanisms of butterflies. That was in the 60s, and there was there's a still consensus. This is contested, but there is still a consensus on the strong phylogenetic conservatism of insect host plant associations. Butterflies have been model organisms for the study of these interactions. And we know that the biggest number of insects is linked to gymnosperms, and there was a diversification on the effect of plants with flowers. But however, in gymnosperms, which are the very old plants that date back to the Mesozoic, which evolved 265 million years ago, we believe that there was little interaction with other insects. And however, in the 80s, we found that there was demonstrated that there was pollination mediated by beetles. So these belief of the fact that there was no interaction with animals, or that this interaction was limited, this has to do with the fact that they are very toxic plants, which probably developed their defense mechanisms in order not to be predated by large predators. And there's some theories that even dinosaurs fed from them. But we know that in spite of their toxicity, they have obligate relationships or interactions with beetles, thrips, and butterflies, and other organisms which are specialists and which have evolved to interact with them. And there is there's the eumyos, which can have a butterfly which can feed from the Samia genus. So this eumyos is a genus of which separates from very abruptly in terms of their characters from other genera from the family. Their aposematic and gregarious butterflies, which don't have interactions with ants, such like other genera have. And this development, we believe, it has been demonstrated that it is linked to their from the evolution of feeding from cycads, and there is enough evidence of the fact that they sequestered these toxins, and we have found this toxin from the emi, and we found these toxins in all the stages of development. EMIOS is an ideal system, in EMIOS Samia is an ideal system to study the relationships between plants and herbivorous insects, especially with this type of gymnosperm plants, which are not normally so studied in these models. However, when we started with this study, we saw a big gap in what we knew about the EMIOS genus between North America and South America. And we could only see 2 reports from Colombia. This was very contrasting because Colombia is the country, country that has the biggest diversity of Samia in the world. So we wanted to know whether there was actually an evolutionary relationship between the 2 species, and we wanted to know, of course, the Colombian species and the Latin American distribution for these groups of butterflies. For this, we did collection in natural populations from the Pacific to the Amazon in specific regions, and we created a data matrix with the revisions of these entomological collections, one in Colombia, one in London, one in Washington, and we looked at open repositories and natural science museums. And with that, we created a matrix with the biggest comprehension of these host plants linked to butterfly species, with the help from both groups. And what we found is that there is effectively a specialist relationship where butterflies depend completely from the host plants. We could then broaden this distribution for the neotropics and fill these gaps where we found at the beginning. So we could see that there was an overlap, a very almost precise overlap, almost perfect, between these host plants and their herbivores, sorry, and this overlapping and interaction was backed up by a phylogenetic signal, co-phylogenetic signal. So there is a relationship between species that are similar of plants and the same species of eumaios, which feeds from them. So what we infer is that the phylogenia of butterflies is tracking the phylogenia of these host plants. This phenomenon would explain this phylogenetic tracking would explain the phylogenetic signal that we are finding in both groups. And it is also possible that the biogeographic barriers and the speciation between the 2 species would play a role there, and that this specialization with these host plants would create a coevolutionary force which play a part in this complex phenomenon of this interaction. This is very important. This is a summary from 2021, in which it is demonstrated this evolutionary phenomena like ours, this green dot here, are not the result of a single force which is exerting a single magnitude which is exerting this force in both groups, but it's a complex phenomenon. This is supported by a comparison of the phylogenias of Samia and Eumaios, where we found that the crown groups, even though Samia is a genus which evolved from the cycads and probably dates back from the Pleistocene. It is going into the Miocene contemporary with the crown group of the eumyios, and the most recent species such as the South American species and the most recent clades of the eumyios genus is are also related in this early divergence of both groups. We also found that there is a zone of hybridization zone, which has previously been studied for other organisms, such as conures and other beetles and even birds. We have found some intermediary species, which could be creating a hybridization. And we couldn't find there morphologically these species, even with the help of experts, and we would still require some genetic analysis to understand what is happening in terms of the speciation there and which barriers or which role are these biogeographic barriers playing. And finally, and what I was telling you about the fact that there are several groups that are factors that are contributing, we found that in some localities, some regions that are very close to each other, there could be specializations of the use of these host plants, such as the Amazon species, which are found throughout the Amazon, and there are some areas where they're being differentiated in terms of the use of the host plant. So hopefully we'll be able to find more data on how this coevolution is contributing in this interaction. Finally, this is a case, study case in between gymnosperms and herbivores. We could find this strong phylogenetic signal in between host plants and their herbivores. And we found that there is a temporal superposition in the divergence times, and this backs up a correlated evolution factor. And several complex factors contribute to this evolution relationship in this system, and I'm sure it's occurring in other systems. So this work contributes to a better understanding of the understanding of evolution and the relationship between plants and their herbivores, specialized for some of the oldest lineages of plants in the world. And of course, all these relationships are very important. This is one of the axes of our work. These are very plants that are very threatened, and of course, all the insects and other animals that are associated to them are in the same danger. Finally, I would like to thank all my collaborators, all the core researchers, and everyone, all the experts who helped us, the grants which funded this work, the Colombian Society of Cycads, and I'm very honored to close this first part of the symposium. And if you have any questions, please go ahead. Thank you very much, Laura, for your really interesting talk about, and thank you very much for using time very wisely. I don't know if we have any questions. Oh, I don't see any questions yet. However, if somebody would like to ask a question in the chat, I would like to ask everyone and tell you that after the end of this first part, there is a 1 hour break, after which we'll come back, but using a different link. So after this session, this link won't be of use anymore. Oh, there is one first question here. Ana Gutierrez, which chemical components have zamias, are present in zamias? Oh, thank you very much. They have three very important compounds: BMA, MAM, and cycazine. There are three cancerogenous and toxic components. So it is proved that mammals are intoxicated by these compounds, and insects such as the eumyios have specialized genes which are linked to the transformation of these components links to lysosomes. That's the last study. It's really interesting because this is a very, it's an obligate specialization, of course. Edwin Castañeda asks, is this study already published and where can we find it? I hope it can be published soon in Ecology and Evolution. We're at the last stages of finalizing this publication. Okay, what happens with these hybrid species of Samia? Well, what we found is that it doesn't adjust, it doesn't fit any of the morphological standards that we have. And it is also present in a region where the biogeographic regions play a very important role. And these are the two groups of early divergence, so the last species of divergence, which coincide with the most recent clades of Samia. So we think our hypothesis is a cryptic specialization there, but we would need to do these genetic analysis in order to understand that. It's really interesting. Thank you very much, Laura. And so you all know, we just pasted in the chat the link for the next session. So the session that will then take place in about an hour. So I believe there is no more questions. There are no more questions. And again, congratulations for your presentation. And yes, there's a lot of congratulations here from everyone in the chat, but would like to thank you all for being here in this first session. And I would like to invite you to be back in using the other link for the second session. Thank you very much. And we'll see you there.